We will be presenting about homologous similarities among vertebrate embryos in relation to and evidence of evolution. Evolutionary history and research findings have shown the relation among vertebrates through their homologous traits found in all vertebrate embryos. Homologous traits are shared from a common ancestor and are passed down through each generation to the descendants. These traits may not look or function the same, but they all come from the same ancestor. The knowledge of the relation among these traits is important because, for example, while a shark seems unrelated to a human, and it has been about 400 million years since our most common ancestor, these traits prove how we still evolved from a common ancestor. Knowing this can help with future research in that we are able to research with other vertebrates to find out key information regarding humans, especially related to the medical field. A few learning objectives for the students are know the dates when homologous traits evolved throughout history, know what the homologous traits are, how do the homologous traits show evidence of evolution from a common ancestor, why is it important to look at the embryos and not the adults, and how can the knowledge of these homologous traits improve our lives today. It is important to know the homologous traits among vertebrate embryos and when they evolved throughout history because it demonstrates various points in time where a trait shows a common evolutionary ancestor linking every vertebrate together. In the next slides, we will be walking through a timeline of some of these traits and explaining how they show evidence of evolution from a common ancestor among vertebrates. The first significant homologous trait among embryos is the nerve cord, which evolved around 600 to 550 million years ago. One characteristic of vertebrates is their bilateral body form, which allows them to have a nerve cord with an enlargement for each body segment. This nerve cord provides a basis for all other homologous traits among vertebrate embryos that were yet to come.
The next trait of a skull, with three parts forming a complex system of nerves, evolved 530 million years ago. This was able to evolve due to the nerve cord. Every vertebrate has a skull consisting of plates, blocks, and rods. These fundamental components help show how all vertebrates can be related throughout a common ancestor. According to Shubin, author of Your Inner Fish, there is a pattern common to every skull on Earth, whether it belongs to shark, a bony fish, a salamander, or human. This pattern and homologous trait of skulls provide evidence for the history of vertebrates being connected over time all the way back to the common ancestor. One of the most common important homologous nerve is the trigeminal cranial nerve, which controls muscles and carries sensory information from the face to the brain. This nerve is different among vertebrates, but still retains the same function and was derived from the same ancestor. For example, in vertebrates, this nerve is connected to the ear. Shubin writes, the reason the trigeminal nerve goes to both the jaw and the ear is that all the structure it supplies originally developed in the first arch. The arch he refers to is the gill arches. All vertebrate embryos shares another homologous trait.
The jawbone and arch genes evolved in the late Ordovician period about 488 to 444 million years ago. The trigeminal nerve is responsible for the jaw. One of the most obvious pieces of evidence that vertebrates share a jawbone is the connection among humans and sharks. While it may seem like we have nothing in common with sharks, like the fact that we don't have enormous teeth, gills, or fins, but interestingly enough, we can learn a lot about ourselves from observing sharks. The jawbone of a shark is similar to the bone in our ear. This makes sense because of the connection of cartilage. Most people are aware that our ear is made of cartilage, but not too many know that this relates us to sharks and connects us back millions of years to a common ancestor. We have an inner shark because of cartilage, another example of a homologous trait that is present not just in vertebrate embryos today, but also some adults. 530 million years ago, evidence of some of the first vertebrate embryos having a skeleton consisting of cartilage has been found. According to Shubin, the muscles and cranial nerves we use to talk and swallow move the gills in the sharks and fish. This shows the connection between cartilage in our ears and sharks and the gill arches, one of the most important homologous traits among vertebrate embryos. These arches are the mat for the cranial nerves found in vertebrates and are very similar to the gill slits still found in some vertebrates today. Shubin writes, every head on every animal from a shark to a human shares those four arches in development. It is important to note that these arches and their homology can only be seen in all the vertebrate embryos. By adulthood, many vertebrates have lost this trait, or it has been converted to another function, such as part of the ears of humans. However, knowing that the embryo in development is tied to these crucial arches can help show the evolution of all vertebrates from a common ancestor. According to Shubin, the arches show segments of bones, muscles, arteries, and nerves we can only see in the embryo. The commonality among these arches found in vertebrate embryos provides the evidence needed to connect the evolutionary history among vertebrates in relation to their homologous traits derived from a common ancestor. It is important to know these homologous traits found among all vertebrate embryos because it shows not only the evolution of vertebrates over time, but also links them all back to one common evolutionary ancestor. Also, this information has many applications in our lives today. Knowing the homologous traits shared among organisms can help with research. The medical research field can be improved due to this information about vertebrate embryos. It can be important in treating diseases, solving health problems, or finding cures. One example of how the knowledge of the homology of vertebrate embryos can help us is that we do not have to test on human embryos. Also, birth defects can be detected fairly easily using this information. For example, if something is missing in an embryo, it can be discovered because we know what traits every vertebrate embryo should have. Evidence of a common ancestor among vertebrates shown through embryos is important for the field of science today.
We have a Kahoot quiz that we will now show to the class.